It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I'm your game master and host, Tyler Hapney. I've run hundreds of sessions of Cyberpunk RED and Dungeons and Dragons combined, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on both of those systems. Today, we're going to be talking a bit more about Cyberpunk RED, and we are going to be discussing something a little crazy, maybe a little, I feel like there needs to be an episode about this. We're going to be talking about drugs. We're talking a lot about combat drugs and street drugs and all sorts of crazy stuff that you can get in Cyberpunk, you get your hands on. And, a lot of this information obviously comes from the base game. But another DLC that you're going to want to take a look at is Hornet's Pharmacy. This released well over a year ago and is detailed a lot of new street drugs as well as a couple of pharmaceuticals that, maybe we'll talk about. But right now, this episode is primarily going to be dedicated towards the type of stuff you can get out on the street as your characters right now. And what exactly that means for your characters and, how that all plays out. So, let's talk about drugs. So, for those that don't know, Cyberpunk RED has obviously a lot of drugs. It's Night City. Come on, it's got to have drugs. And generally, the way you take these drugs is you just ingest them as an action, and then typically you have to make a resist torture and drugs check to avoid getting addicted to said drug. Depending on how addicting the drug is, the resist torture and drugs check could be higher, it could be lower, who knows. But for the most part, if you fail that resist torture and drugs check, you are addicted to the drug now. And usually there's a penalty to that. So we're going to kind of go over a couple of these drugs, and we're going to go over the penalties if you get addicted and, the best way to use them, stuff like that. And I guess when I say best way to use them, I mean, best time. Good timing, kind of stuff like that. Anyways, the first one we're going to go into is a drug I believe is partly a little bit kind of mentioned in Cyberpunk 2077. By kind of mentioned, there's a improved version of it that's a little less of a drug. But we're going to be talking about Berserker. Yeah, Berserker. It's a pretty light form of black lace, which we're going to actually be getting to next. But Berserker itself is a drug that increases a person's aggression factor and also prevents them from feeling pain. Obviously, if you use Berserker, you are probably going to be pretty angry, pretty energized, and you also have a potential chance of permanent humanity loss, which is really, really, really crazy. Because, that means that technically should be pretty powerful if you're losing humanity permanently. Black Lace kind of does the same. Black Lace does do the same, but obviously that's one of the stronger drugs. Anyways, what does Berserker do? Well, it lasts 10 minutes. And when you suffer a critical injury, you do not take any of the bonus damage. So you don't take that extra 5 bonus damage critical injuries, or 10 bonus damage if you get hit in the head. I don't know. I think it's just still 5. For the duration of the primary effect, any penalties you're suffering to stats or actions due to being seriously or mortally wounded is halved. Which means if you're seriously wounded, you're only losing 1 on your rolls. And if you're mortally wounded, you're only losing 2. Wow. That's pretty good. You also are not getting affected by face downs as much. So obviously it is about the same. If you lose a face down, you lose like -2 to all your rolls. But if you have Berserker, it's only -1. And you're also highly aggressive. So, do your best to roleplay accordingly. So what happens if you fail the secondary effect and you become addicted to Berserker? Well, you immediately take 2 points of humanity loss upon becoming addicted to this wonderful substance. And while addicted, your base death save penalty is permanently increased by 1, which means that it's easier to kill you. So yeah, you might be able to stay up longer, but technically it is going to be easier to put you down, and that's kind of a trade-off. You're going to have to consider if you want to get into some berserker, because you might very well become addicted, and then you gotta deal with that. All right, so the next one is Black Lace. Black Lace is from the base game, but it's also really, 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 I mean, it's just powerful. This one directly shows up in 2077. You get offered it by Maelstrom. So, what is Black Lace? Well, Black Lace is a drug that is essentially a more powerful version of Berserker. So as where Berserker, gives you a minus, Black Lace completely removes the seriously wounded effect, where you don't have to worry about taking that -2. Obviously though, it is a bit more powerful, in the sense that well, if you fail your check, you just lose 2d6 humanity, which is a lot more than Berserkers 2. However, once again, you are completely ignoring the effects of seriously wounded. I'm pretty sure mortally wounded as well, which is crazy stuff. You can keep going for a long time if that's what's going on with you. You can really, really give it to him if you are just, going for it. I guess is the best way to say. Black Lace is like, I don't know. It's just there if you really, really, really want to, kick some butt. Hey, let's talk about Blue Glass. I like Blue Glass. Blue Glass is, I don't know exactly what kind of drug this would be. I don't know, maybe like Whippets or LSD. I don't know. I'm not too informed on that kind of stuff. But what it does do is, admittedly, work as a pretty good crowd control weapon. And okay, I'll get to that. So, what is Blue Glass though? Well, Blue Glass, it makes you loopy. It makes you hallucinate. Most commonly, vibrant colors that completely fill vision. But what its main drawback is, and obviously if you fail, you become addicted to Blue Glass, and you experience flash outs, where basically randomly the game master will be like, all right, you're flashing out, here's a bunch of colors, and your character can't do anything this round because you're hallucinating and super, scuzzed out. Which is great, obviously if you're taking the Blue Glass, but here's how I mean crowd control. So there is an item. It's called it's a gas dispenser for your arm. I forget exactly what it's called right now at the moment, but you can basically, it aerosolizes anything you put in there, and allows you to blast it in a shotgun blast out over, however many people. And basically, if you put a bunch of Blue Glass in there and then, spray down a whole group of bad guys, if they fail their check, or I mean, even if they don't technically, if they get hit by the Blue Glass, they flash out. They lose a turn because they're too busy flashing out. If they fail that check, they might keep flashing out. So, just some food for thought with Blue Glass. It might not be your thing if you're playing as somebody, but at the same time, if you have someone in your group that has that cyber arm, Blue Glass is insanely worth it. And technically, any drug is insanely worth it with that cyber arm, because you can technically, if you wanted to boost your allies, you could just like blast them with a bunch of Sith Coke. And hey, speaking of Sith Coke, let's talk about Sith Coke. What is Sith Coke? Well, it's synthetic cocaine. Some might be able to figure that one out. So one might be able to figure out what exactly you feel when you take Sith Coke. I'm assuming energy. It says paranoia as well, which is, probably likely. I mean, this is a fake drug. It's synthetic. And in the Cyberpunk universe, they tend to have this thing where, the synthetic ones are way worse than the normal ones. And the normal ones are pretty bad too. So, But yeah, since it's synthetic, it's likely made to be addictive, more addictive, and also, of course, the paranoia is probably worse than what you would get on normal stuff. Once again, not exactly sure how that exactly works out, but synth coke actually has a lot of history in the cyberpunk setting. The Gang of Four, or the Big Three. I kind of forget what they're called. I know it's kind of a sin in a cyberpunk war podcast, but to be honest with you, I did just wake up. But basically, they spread a bioplague that completely eliminated all the natural cocaine in the world, and then they replaced it with synth coke, which is obviously way more addictive, has way more side effects, and I mean, we're talking cocaine here. So imagine how bad this must be. Like, let's just clarify here. This is worse than regular stuff. Yeah, man, it cannot be good at all for the people of Night City or the people of whatever, the world of Cyberpunk. But hey, that's kind of the point, isn't it? All right. So what does synth coke do? Well, synth coke, when you snort it, you obviously have your little thingy, and if you fail, you are now addicted and experience severe paranoia for the next 4 hours. However, you get, and this is huge, +1 reflexes. And that's the only way to increase your reflexes, I believe. So, I've always told my players that if they really, truly, really, really do truly want to, save some stat points in character creation, they could, if they wanted to dodge bullets, have 8 reflexes, or they could have 7 reflexes and a cocaine addiction, because the cocaine will help cover that lost stat point, and as long as they are drugged up, they can dodge bullets. Which for me personally, I like that aesthetic. I like the idea of, I have to snort drugs in order to dodge bullets. That's really funny to me. But yeah. And I'll give you that advice too. If you give your character a cocaine habit, you can save 1 stat point at character creation. Fun times. Next up, I think this might be one of the last ones we talk about. I'm not sure. We don't have a ton of time left here. We're going to talk about prime time. Prime time is a favorite of mine, honestly. I love prime time. I have used primetime only a few times, but every time it has worked out for me. So what is primetime? Well, primetime is a drug that you can take that, oftentimes is used by corpos, and primarily what it does is it increases your cool, and I believe your willpower as well, which is pretty good, all things considered. Once you take prime time, you lose 46 humanity loss, but it's returned when the primary effect ends, and it cannot reduce you below 0 humanity. So you can't take some prime time and then immediately go cyber psycho. That won't happen. No. So what happens during the primary effect? Well, your cool and will are increased by 2 points. It does not increase your user's hit points. So just keep in mind, even though your willpower is increased, your HP has not. Your emotions are repressed during this time. You are a machine. And if you fail on the secondary effect, you take 1 point of permanent humanity loss. That's, not bad, but when you consider, maybe taking that drug more often, you'll realize that stuff will really compound. And of course, now, while you are addicted, your cool is lowered by 2 points unless you are on prime time. So you have to take more prime time in order to keep up that cool facade of yours, which means, if you have a character that's addicted to prime time, you're suddenly going to have a character that's a lot less emotional. Your emotions are going to be very repressed because you're on prime time all the time, and you're going to be actively losing humanity. So, there's a pretty serious trade-off there that you got to really consider. And personally, I think it's worth it. I think it's totally worth it. All right, we got time for one more, and it's going to be a quick one. We're going to talk about Time Warp. Time Warp is easily the best for netrunners. This stuff is crazy. I Oh wait, this isn't. I'm thinking of a six gun. This is Time Warp. Time Warp is basically uh speedwear. So your Kerenzikov, your Sandevistan, but this is a drug version of that. If you take Time Warp for the duration of a minute, you add a +3 to any initiative roll that you make. And if taken while you're already in the initiative queue, guess what? You get bumped up 3 places by your initiative increases by 3, which means you can be bumped up in turn order, which is crazy. I love time warp. And obviously, if you're addicted to time warp, you subtract 2 from any initiative rolls they make, unless you are currently on time warp, which means they're going to be taking more time warp. Yep, that's how the drugs work. That is how drugs work normally. And I don't know, man. Time Warp's pretty good. Like I said, it's just a drug version of Sandevistan, with the possible effect that you lose initiative permanently until you get addiction therapy, which costs some money. So, I would consider whether or not it's worth it. I think it's worth it. Personally, I love characters that do a lot of drugs. They're always just so fun to DM for. There are so many drugs. Obviously, I mentioned six gun. There are pharmaceuticals we could talk about, but I think that is just a nice little introduction into some of the basic sort of drugs you're going to come across in Night City. You're probably going to hear a lot about, at least Black Lace and Synth Coke. So we're going to get on now to our metaphorical monster of the week. And this time, I'd like to go over to Rancho Coronado and talk a little bit about a small booster gang that's been making some noise in the time of the Red. And that would be the albino alligators. The albino alligators are a booster gang that are based out of Rancho Coronado, specifically out of a car wash in Rancho Coronado, and this is their base of operations. And I honestly think one of the coolest parts about the albino alligators is the fact that their uniform is all the polo shirts and staff outfits from this car wash. That's why they're called the albino alligators, is because the car wash's mascot is an albino alligator. I don't know. It's kind of cute. They were kind of just a normal sort of group, to be honest with you, just a normal little lower sort of booster gang. They showed up first, I believe, in this sort of one shot they made where Mr. Amaze he had this big sort of bulletproof glass box set up, and people were trying to get inside because there's a bunch of money in there. And the albino alligators show up, and they're an obstacle for your players, but they're not really anything crazy beyond that until we get to the Tales from the Red, Forlorn Hope, and they return now to Woodland Park, which is a whole. I think I've talked about Woodland Park, that mission, on this podcast before, but basically there's this entire mission where you discover the underboss of the albino alligators, Tarkin. She's planning to take over Woodland Park and use it as essentially a new base of operations for the albino alligators. And they just so happen to be in the same neighborhood as the players, doing that while the players are doing their own thing. So obviously there's some crossed wires, and if it's anything like my group, it ends in a very large fight in a very large parking lot with a lot of gunfire, a lot of bodies, and eventually they come out on top and save the neighborhood from the albino alligators. Is that the last we're going to see of them? Probably not. We'll probably be seeing more of the albino alligators in future, story expansions, stuff like that. But man, so far their appearance has been interesting. They seem to be one of the I want to say favorite booster gangs of our Tale story, but I mean, they've shown up a few times. They're at least a presence. I use them a little bit myself. I mean, if they're ever in the Rancho Coronado, Santo Domingo kind of area, maybe they will have some albino alligators show up and cause some trouble, just as like a random event or something. Haven't had any storylines based around them, but that doesn't mean that that can't happen in the future. I'm personally a big fan. But yeah, the albino alligators. If you're using a booster gang in your game, do consider this one's pretty big. So that'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. Next week we're going to talk a bit more about Dungeons and Dragons, probably. I'm Tyler Hapney, and this has been Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening.